Dr. Moshe Lewis here, Music and Medicine. We are excited and ecstatic to be in the home studio of Skyler Lexx, bassist, also played the drums, musician himself in his own right, producer, executive, and now CEO of his own company. He's really going to explain to us sort of what it takes to not only create all this bling, but to make an artist truly pop. Thanks so much for having us over.
The pleasure's all mine.
I just wanted to start out because there's just so much amazing stuff here. Just tell us about just a couple of the artists. We lay a little bit of foundation of what you've done that we can see some of their memorabilia.
Well, I think one of the projects I was happy about with the outcome was Madonna. I did a remix for her. And I think that was back in 2000. And funny story about that. I'll make it short, easy for us. I had everything done and I was working on a PC. I had Windows as my operating system. The song was due the next morning and the computer crashed at like 3 a.m. Everything was gone. It's here for Windows. No, I'm sorry. That's right. I got a Mac right now.
Exactly.
I had to reprogram the whole song and fortunately it came out really, really well and everybody was happy with it. And that reminds me of another quick story of working with David Williams, the guitarist for Madonna on a lot of her stuff, and Michael Jackson's guitarist as well for most of all of his hits. I was doing another remix for Madonna, and I kept adding stuff that I liked, and the more I added, I thought it was great, but the more the song was degrading at that point. And David said, look, man, you keep adding all that stuff, the record company's going to kick it back. And I was like, screw you, I'm just going to do it anyway because it's what I like. I called him a couple days later. He turned it down. He said, look, man, I done sold 600 million records, so you don't want to listen to me, but you'll figure it out one way or the other. And I figured it out that day. And I've lived by the motto, less is more.
Sure. And let's tease that out a little bit, though, because you talked about putting various elements in it. What are some of the types of things, maybe you can't be super specific, but that a producer really brings to the artist? Because I don't think people can fully appreciate that.
Well, not only the elements of the music, because something as simple as a cowbell could make a difference in a song, you know. And first of all, not only do you have to produce the artist, but you have to produce the musicians on the record as well. So I use Kool and the Gang horns, and some of these guys don't play enough, or some of them overplay. And when it comes to music, it's not about what you put in the song, it's about what you don't put into it. So the parts that are left unsaid are sometimes more important than the parts that you're doing. You know, so after you have to produce everybody else that's doing a record, and believe it or not, the engineer that's involved, which me dealing with the engineer on a few of these plaques, you got to produce him too. You know what I mean? Because an engineer to your record is like the bookkeeper to your company. The numbers have got to be right. And for the record to sound right, the engineer has to be careful about the way he mixes everything and the way he ultimately makes the artist sound. Because the record company is only interested in a record. They don't do demos.
Right. I love it. So you've got a couple of other people up here in addition that I know have some amazing stories.
Yeah, David Williams is by the Janet affiliation, and Ricky Ross is behind the Beyonce affiliation. I think you interviewed Ricky a few weeks ago.
Sure. And what was the song that he worked on with her?
Bonnie and Clyde, was it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the one he did with Tupac.
Right.
Ricky is like American Express. Don't leave home without him.
Sorry. Phenomenal bass.
Oh, man. Yes, yeah, he plays bass and guitar. Mm-hmm. And he was doing that with Tupac over at Death Row, but, you know, in this industry, it's not what you know, it's who you know.
Absolutely, everything. And a couple of other people up there that I think that...
we have a percussionist by the name of Lenny Garcia, mm-hmm. And I helped him with some of his paperwork and administrative stuff for Lady Gaga. And he's got a Grammy out for Lady Gaga. This guy is born again hippie, salt of the earth, the nicest person you could be. And I use him often as well.
Sure. So I think you've hit on a key element I wanted you to tease out, which is this idea of essentially being a conductor of an orchestra. Talk to us about sort of bringing all these elements and obviously people together.
You know, sometimes when I'm producing the artist, I'll guide them to get them excited, like a church choir almost, you know, like this, and give me some power on that part and tone it down. But to me, that coincides with being a conductor, if you will. But you almost have to be the artist's cheerleader, keep them happy and keep them motivated. And you got to really be their parents, husband, best friend, father, all of that stuff. Because to me, and I'm a born again hippie myself, to me, it's all about positive energy. And anybody that I work with, it's got to be positive in, positive out. I absolutely do not do negative. It's against the law.
Sure. And speaking of, well, I guess it could be a household name. I see Rihanna over there.
Yes, we had an engineer by the name of Jeff Gibbs. All of these people I met through Paramount, by the way, or mostly all of them through Paramount. And my affiliation with her is through Jeff Gibbs, who was her engineer for a while, and one of her songwriters as well, Makiba Riddick. I took her to Universal to meet with a senior VP over there after her contract expired. And Makiba wrote for Rihanna and Beyonce. Really great soul. And we met with my guy over at Universal, and they were debating working with her again because she worked a lot with Def Jam, which is owned by Universal as well. And she's a good person. I think she's a little bit in the gospel right now, but she's a great writer and positive and positive out.
Sure, absolutely. We'll end on this note, talking to a young artist that's coming up. What are some of the things when you say that positive in, positive out that you hope, beyond just the vocals and beyond just personality, that they are willing to give of themselves to see this process through?
Well, one of the most important things you got to remember is to be humble and stay humble. You know what I mean? I've taken people to Universal Music for meetings with them, and the arrogance that was coming out the room was just wow. I brought this girl in, and this applies to everybody, whether you're young, medium-aged, or whatever. They're signing people that are older too. But if you're new to the industry, I wouldn't carry a know-it-all attitude. I would be moldable if it were me, because when you stop learning, you die. You know what I mean? So you got to be open to suggestions from the record company. For instance, when Whitney Houston did The Bodyguard, she didn't want to do that song, but Clive Davis talked her into it. When Christina Aguilera, who's right there, wanted to do her first album, she didn't want to do Genie in a Bottle, which put her on the map. But Clive Davis once again intervened and said, you know, you do this for me and I'll do this for you, but you got to do this record. And that was the biggest record she had, and that's the one that put her on the map. You know what I mean? So my point is, you got to be flexible with the record company. There may be certain things you don't want to do, but you may not see it at the moment, but it's to your best interest to be moldable, if that makes sense. And I think you'll go a long way. And real quick, getting back to that first part I was talking about with this arrogant Instagram artist, if you will. This girl had about 2.3 million followers on Instagram. And it's answers your question about being open and everything else. So we go into the label, and I'm sitting next to her as he's sitting next to me, and we're facing the senior VP at the label. And she's just blabbing on about herself and just going on and on and on. And I mean, it was wearing out the plants. The plants started dying. So I let it go for about 2 minutes, and the guy from the label was being very humble and just so cool. I mean, he doesn't want to put out any negativity or anything else like that. So I spoke up for him. And I just looked at her and I said, don't you know they have 10 more of you in the lobby? And the guy from the label said, no, 15. We all fell out. And the lesson to be learned in this is they didn't do business with her. And I got a call from her parents later that day. Well, real quick, I stayed after she left when that meeting was done. And I asked them, I said, I thought you were all into her and you wanted to sign her and everything was cool. And he said, let me tell you something. When you have people like this that are less than positive up front, and I think the word he really wanted to say was a-hole, but he said, when people are like this up front, you put $1 million check in their hands and they're completely uncontrollable. So that chapter's closed. We don't have to discuss that again. So I get a call from her parents later in the day, and they took issue with the label not being interested, but the label's your investor.
Right.
You're going to tell your investor how to spend their money now? And another thing she said was, I only want distribution from the label in the United States, and all other territories I'll control myself. Well, it's called Universal Music for a reason. You know what I mean? So she was crying. Her parents started getting really arrogant to me. And, you know, I just flatly told them they didn't quit making them when they made you. You know what I mean? And that's the end of that. But seeing her parents' arrogance, instead of trying to find a solution, that shows where she got it from. And that's all.
Absolutely. When we return, we're going to do a little bit behind the scenes of how you actually put some of these productions together and maybe even go on set.
It would be my honor. Absolutely.